Welcome to Sustainability Now, an exploration of technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. Designed for socially conscious entrepreneurs and individuals interested in responsible stewardship of the planet. Sustainability Now covers food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome, everybody, to Sustainability Now, Technologies and Paradigms to Shape a World that Works. I'm your host, Mira Rubin, and today we're delighted to introduce our guest, Judah Becker. Now, Judah is a champion of justice and an entrepreneur, and he's got a vast knowledge of horticulture, counseling, rescue work, career development, all these things that are very, very relevant to you, our audience. And he has an organization called Change a Destiny that has been tremendously effective. And part of his mission is in helping to stop human trafficking and also prospering the poor, not only in the United States, but in a number of countries abroad as well. So Judah's organization is a faith-based ministry, and while we are non-denominational, you have such a compelling story, Judah, that we just felt it would be interesting and rewarding for our audience. And with that in mind, I just want to say welcome. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here, and thank you for inviting me on the show.
Well, you just have such a wonderful story. So let's start. There's so many topics. I mean, we talked about human trafficking, and I think because that's such a hugely emotional topic that we should address that first. So can you tell us, how did you get involved in rescuing people from human trafficking, and what did that look like?
Just about everything I've gotten into, I've kind of backed into. I was traveling in the villages of Thailand in the hill country and helping them with their water projects. And so, just teaching them that clean water comes into the village and dirty water flows out of the village, so the kids didn't get hookworm and different diseases you get from sewage. And we were walking into one village, and a truckload of kids were coming down the mountain, and usually that's how they get to school, in the back of a pickup truck. And so I waved at them, but they were all crying. And so I asked my translator, why are these kids crying? And he didn't know. And so we went into the village, and the adults were crying. And then I told my translator to go over there and ask what's going on. And he came back, and he was crying. And they just sold their children. That was my defining moment. I said, I quit, drew a line in the sand. I said, you show me how to make this different. I'd been living in Kona, Hawaii on a coffee plantation before coming to Thailand. And as I'm bawling my eyes out in this village and on my knees, just looking for an answer, I looked up, and there was wild coffee trees in the jungle. Guess years and years ago, they started growing coffee trees, but they were really nasty tasting coffee. And so they just had let them go. And living on a coffee plantation in Kona, I knew exactly what to do. And I said, thank you. And I went back home, and I came back with 5,000 coffee trees, grafted them into the wild coffee trees, and made this phenomenal coffee. That village prospered. We went into 2 other villages, and they prospered. And those 3 villages taught other villages how to prosper. We now have an association of 300 different associations, ones that support through mushroom farms, some through fish farms, some a lot through coffee, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, I got down to the brass tacks of it. How do we keep people from selling their children? And it was prosper the poor. It was a very simple thing. And the other one, of course, is education. Not only education of the children, but education of the adults to go, hey, they're not going to the city to get a good job. They're being sold into prostitution. And once that word got around, they couldn't put the blinders on. I think most parents know this person coming in is a ruthless person, that something's not right. But when you're desperately poor, your decision-making abilities go way down, and now they're prospering. And that's how I got started. Started going to other countries, doing the same thing.
So this is such a profound story of transformation and how we can use business to truly transform a culture. And it doesn't necessarily take much. I mean, you saw a circumstance, you saw an opportunity that had been untapped, and then multiplied your efforts by teaching people how to teach people.
Exactly. And it's amazing. I go in and I find people who have, a little moxie and a little bit of ability and a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit, and I help them start a business and then commission them to start 2 other businesses for 2 other people. And so in one place, this mom was selling her daughter and herself and living in a little hovel. And we went out and for $500, we started a fruit stand. Well, she told her friends about this, and they came up with other ideas. And now I'm seeing a community being changed by something as simple as a $500 fruit stand. It was just amazing. That's up in Nepal. We did that one last year.
So do you go still to Thailand and other countries on an annual basis?
Yes, every year I try to hit at least 3 countries. You go back and kind of tweak it. One of our well drilling projects that we did in India, I came back and they were back to carrying filthy water and the kids getting sick and all that kind of stuff. I go, what's going on? We drilled you a well. Well, it broke. It doesn't work. They were missing a bolt. And, I went, oh, Judah, you have to teach repair and maintenance, because we do this in our sewing school. We do it, and I'm going like, it didn't even occur to me they wouldn't know how to repair a hand pump, on a well. But we did that, and they're back to drinking fresh, clean water and doing great. So you have to go back and kind of make sure everything's working.
So you just mentioned your sewing school. What's that?
Well, that was real simple. That was in Philippines. This dear Mother Maria. I mean, she's just one of the cutest little people you ever met in your whole life. 4'5", and for her 80th birthday, she had 75 orphans that she's taking care of. This beautiful staff, and she says, Judah, I've been to your website and I know what you can do. For my 80th birthday, I want 5 more orphans. And she takes and has her driver park right in front of this brothel. And I went in there and I took 5 kids out of there. And she says, well, now the next thing I want you to do is show me how to support all these kids. And so she drove me up to the village, and we started a sewing school up there for 8 ladies. And they're all responsible to each other. There's a $100 sewing machine if they complete the class. Repair, maintenance, fashion, and marketing. Very important. Entrepreneurs, they have to teach marketing. And instead of selling their garments for $1 a piece, they're selling them for $5 to boutiques. And they're fashionable. And for you and I, that's a $50 garment or a $100 garment here in the States. So it was just great to launch this little work. But they all collect their money and they pay back their little micro loan of $100. And one lady's responsible for collecting from all the others. So good peer pressure there. And with all of our micro loans, whether it's the fruit stand or whatever, they have paid back their loans because they're just so happy to start prospering. And then we teach them investing, et cetera, et cetera. So they never have to go backwards in their income.
So with all of the things that you're doing, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet, so we've got a little bit more time in the interview. How big a team do you have to be doing all these things?
Well, what I do is every time I go into a country, I find 5 faithful people. And each one has a different skill set. One guy's an attorney, and he is so great. He knows all the villages, and they're squatters, so they have legal problems, and that's how he got involved. He was donating his time to help him with that. And very faithful. 17 years he's been going out, reaching out, and he's reached almost 400 villages. Well, it was easy to train him how to train these people to be entrepreneurs. Subodh, we started a polyclinic with him. He's a dentist. He knows that poor people need eye doctors and women doctor and a child doctor, pediatrician, etc. And so he says, if we put them all in the same clinic, these guys can go out to the villages because each one has 5 interns. And so you can just pick one intern from each one of the specialties and go out. With Sandeep, he's a super entrepreneur. And I says, I want you to teach these village people how to be entrepreneurs. Would you run an academy? In his own home, his wife is so hospitable and their kids are adorably hospitable. They teach 15 elders at a time coming into his house, live there for the weekend, and the long class is 1 week long, and the extra long class is 2 weeks long. So they take the 3-day, then the 1 week, and then the 2 week because they have to be home for their in order to make income. And so each one of these have prospered like that, and the same thing with the fish farms, and then building orphanages and guest houses. That any way that I can see a way, because it is beautiful for people like ourselves, Americans, to go over there, live on an orphanage in a beautiful guest house, and just be part of that. You're in the real Thailand, real India. We have what we call faithcations and medical vacations. And so come over there and get your teeth fixed for about 1/10 the price and have the most wonderful hospitality you ever had in your whole life. It's just fantastic.
Wow. So you're kind of blending cultures and giving people an opportunity to make a contribution while benefiting personally.
Yes, it's absolutely, it's that synergy we need to know that we are a global village. I know it sounds corny, but once you realize that your people in India, your people in Thailand, your people in Nepal or Philippines, they need you and you need them. The type of hospitality, love, sacrifice, and giving that I've received from my people overseas, it brings me to my knees every time. I weep with happiness.
There's such a message of hopefulness here, and in a time when there are so many things to be challenged by, to be reminded of the good-heartedness that people really have and how much we really do want to make a difference in the world. And you're a testament to one person being able to make a humongous difference in the world.
And anybody can. Everybody has wonderful skills. I went down during Katrina, remember that? And we built 268 houses down there, tiny homes. And I kind of, that was the job. And I came back here to Utah, and I saw in my own city of Ogden, people who were renting and didn't own their own home. We're able to build homes and be able to lease to own the houses for $500 down and $500 a month, because we have so many people helping to keep the cost of the house down. We build an entire house for $35,000.
Well, this is a perfect segue into what you're up to in terms of prospering the poor in the U.S., taking your skills from these other ventures. I do want to circle back to complete the sex trade, or the before we move into the tiny homes, because you said something that I want to explore a little bit further. And that was that you went into a brothel and pulled out these kids. And I just want to have a deeper awareness of what actually that entailed. How do you actually do something like that?
Well, the way that it works in many countries is you go into a bar and there's ladies working there, sex workers working there, and you ask for the younger ones, and they think that you're taking them back to your hotel and they're going to return with the cash from the transaction. And instead, I have a woman who's trained in their language, their culture, and has come out of sex trafficking, older woman, 20, 30, 40 years old, and explains to the kids, you don't ever have to go back. We can take you to a safe house tonight. And 99% of the time, they will go to a safe house. So all I have to do is, go in and ask for a couple of kids. It's a real simple operation. It usually costs me $5 or $10, $15 to do that.
Wow.
And I'm going, okay, this is a lot faster than some of these big organizations. And I'm not the most patient person in the world. And when somebody's hurting, I want to take care of it today. So always been that.
You sort of, you pose as a customer, take the kids, and then let them have the choice as to what they want to do for the future.
Yes.
That's remarkable. That's absolutely
That's all
remarkable.
it takes, And so, yeah, but it's hard on my soul. I thank God that there's people taking over my position. And, that's the thing. As soon as you hit the land, start training 5 people to do what you're doing. And that's what I've done in every single country. Every time I go back, every new project, I try my best not to do the project, but to oversee the project and fund the project through, people's generous donations. And once it's all going, and you did then a whole lot cheaper. I'm hiring somebody for $2-3 a day, which is 2 or 3 times more than what they've been getting. And so they're really excited about it, and they do it a lot better job. And if you saw these guys pour concrete or anything like this, you just go, I don't know how they work that hard all day, but they do.
It's a brilliant business strategy and a really good tip for our audience of social entrepreneurs, for sure. So now that we've wrapped that, tied a bow on that conversation, let's come to what you're doing in the U.S. You're taking your skills and knowledge base that you've developed, and you're using them to prosper the poor in the U.S. So
Yes.
This tiny home project, let's talk a bit about that.
It's called Village of Hope, and it's our destiny, our Change of Destiny organization is casting a vision for 122 homes in the Ogden area, and we will put them all together. The advantage is that we have a social hall where they can all come and eat every Friday night and share, secrets of how they prospered this week, where they did well. They have one guy, he's just beaming. He worked for 9 years for the same wage, and it was $12 an hour, so virtually minimum wage. And he never thought to ask for a raise.
Wow.
He came back, says, I got a $2 an hour raise. All he had to do is ask. But he comes from a culture where you don't ask. And so he's learning how to be a little bit of an entrepreneur, and was very excited to share. So each one of the people, now you're a homeowner, you're going to act differently than a renter. There's something that happens to our soul and our spirit that I have a piece of the rock, if you will.
So what kind of area are these 122 tiny homes being built on?
5 acres.
And there's community buildings as well then?
Exactly. Now, at this time, we're just getting started, and the property is under negotiation for where they will land. That right now we just have a few that they're in good locations, and we want to them all eventually, hopefully by spring, onto this property. But we got to do a lot of infrastructure, and it is Utah, so it gets snowy and cold, and it might be a little difficult, but we're pushing as fast as we can.
So with these tiny homes, being a show oriented around sustainability,
Yes.
What kinds of considerations are you making toward making it a sustainable community of tiny homes? Obviously, the fact that you're using tiny homes is conserving, but let's go a step even beyond that.
So we do have a small carbon footprint, which is wonderful. And we have the sharing of, major types of equipment, everything from rakes and shovels, and having our organic garden, and people having their own little cottage industry, whether it's, making candles, leather work, or blacksmiths, or, whatever the community needs and wants. The social hall also acts as a gift shop and place for people to show their wares. So we're saving on petroleum because they're not driving anywhere, and we're on a bus line. So that's a big thing. Their jobs are very close, 0.5 kilometer to 3 kilometers away. So you put all those kinds of things. And then, like, we've talked about, is we're getting more and more information on how to have sustainable products, organic products, to build the homes themselves. And it's amazing the people who come out of the woodwork who know stuff. And so I'm always in school. I'm always being schooled on how to do it better, faster, and more efficiently, which I just love. And like I said, you have a half a dozen people who are really doing the work, and my job is just to be there to encourage them and share whatever skills I have. that synergy is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
So you're really quite the visionary. And I think you've created a strategy to be able to create action out of that vision in a really efficient way with creating teams, right?
Exactly. And that's the key, is that, you find faithful people who will train others. And I'm always looking for, people like yourself who, to do this program day in and day out. It takes a lot of faithfulness and a lot of energy and effort and endurance. You found your skill set as you train others to do the same thing. You saw how the internet has multiplied. With the same thing happened in Thailand with sex trafficking. 300 associations now are working in this area. Human trafficking has been cut in half in the last 20 years since we started this.
That's hopeful. I had no idea, because actually it's been on my radar more than ever. So it feels like it's more prevalent. To hear that statistic is very heartening.
Yes, and even poverty. Poverty's been cut in half in the last 20 years. Once you start seeing the global picture and the real statistics, and and I have the privilege of having feet on the ground and eyes on the scene, it is extremely hopeful. And if one person like myself can do what I've done, and I can train 5 people to do the same thing, the fire has started, and I have a lot of hope for this world.
That's a wonderful sentiment, and we share that. We're all about propagating hopefulness. And so I wanted to ask you, how can people get engaged with what you're up to? How can people support what you're accomplishing right now in the world?
The easiest way is to go to changeadestiny.org. That's our website, changeadestiny.org. And there's a buffet of charity there. And whatever your thing is, and some people, they can do a microloan. Some people can do a macro loan. Some people have money that they can give and just enjoy the tax write-off that you get for donating to a 501c3. And then there's people who come over with us and they stay over there, and I get to show them the hospitality and love of all these wonderful people. So just kind of search your heart. What do you want to do? How do you want to change a destiny? And if you go to changeadestiny.org, there's a dozen different opportunities that are right there. And we have some people come up with their own, with the tiny homes for Village of Hope. One gal comes up to me, I love making curtains. Can I make curtains for the tiny homes? A guy doesn't think of that sort of stuff. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Yes, please. And then another one says, you really need to make the interior decorating a little classier than this. And if you do this, and this, I went, that's brilliant. That's great. So all of us have wonderful gifts and abilities and talents, and we just get there. Just let your heart go there.
I just want to say that we'll be posting resource links also on our website, on the podcast page, sustainabilitynow.global.
Oh,
but absolutely. So are there any books that you would recommend in terms of references that people could check out to learn more about sustainability, about fish farms or mushroom farms, or any of these wonderful tiny home resources, things like that?
Yes. Growing Power is an absolute phenomenal. TED Talks and YouTubes, you put in anything, if something will come up in the area that you're interested in. I put one in there just on recycling garbage. It was phenomenal. And I'm going, wow, there's so much we can do with this. And in the Philippines, one of our crazy, the other one is YWAM, Youth with a Mission. They have great resources, and their books are so inexpensive, and they've done it. So they're working out proven stuff. And this one group went to the garbage island in the Philippines, which is 700 feet tall, and they were so poor they couldn't afford to put their loved ones in a coffin when they died. And so these 5 guys went to the city, bought all the tools and stuff to be able to make a casket. And they so took to it that now the rich people on the rest of the area in the city are buying these caskets. and these people are being lifted out of the garbage heap and into prosperity.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal stuff. So how to build a tiny home. Oh, go on the tiny home site. You'll be amazed. So I do a lot of reading on, wealth and entrepreneurialism, and there's some great writers out there. You got to kind of pick your flavor that you like. I know everybody knows Tony Robbins, and he's a great guy in some ways, but he's just too much energy for me. So there's some people, man, that charges them up. Now they're ready to do all, and he does phenomenal fundraising. He raised like $250,000 in one night just by, hey, Judah, what are you doing? So, very grateful for people like that that just stand up. He asked somebody in the audience, are you doing something wonderful? Go ahead and share it. And then boom. So there are people with influence and power that are much, much, bigger than me, that they can do a fundraiser in a single night. We have one lady, she makes the best buffets you ever saw and loves events. And she puts together one of these wonderful events with a silent auction and all that kind of stuff. That's her thing. And she is generously given to us. My wife, she is an artist, and so she paints, and she's an international singer, and so she has a CD, and she just donates it to the orphans. It's just absolutely awesome, and it supports her habit of painting.
That's awesome. So is there a question that you wish I would have asked?
I can't think of one right now. It has been one of those extremely busy mornings this morning. We had one of our guys in our restoration house. His wife tried to commit suicide.
Oh, my heavens.
So,
wow.
As you probably guessed, I'm a sensitive guy. And just, if you just let your heart be your heart, don't be afraid of tears. Don't be afraid of getting dirty. Sit in the dirt with somebody. Be where people are at. I was downtown, and there was this gang of little gangbangers, teenagers, 20-something maybe. And, they look pretty scary sitting there in the amphitheaters, taking all these seats and their pants hanging down around their knees kind of stuff. And I walked over there, and I said, hey, do you mind? I was eating lunch. He says, you mind if I sit down here? Said, oh, sir, please have a seat. Sir? I fell in love with these guys. They're awesome. And they're just a father. The question I asked is, are you willing to adopt somebody just as a friend, as a sister, as a brother, as a father, as a mother? It's amazing what you can do when you just adopt somebody in your heart. It doesn't have to be legal paperwork. It's just adopting people in your heart. And so that's what I'd like the question I'd like to ask.
Thank you, Judah, so much for being here with us today. It was wonderful having you. And I want to thank our listeners and our production manager, Scott Billy. Obviously, we can't do this without you guys. So that's it for today. Until next time, live your best life, love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now, solutions to shape a world that works. Visit sustainabilitynow.global for resources related to today's program. And be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.